Dobro. History. Archive.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a disaster at sea, but it's probably not the one you're thinking of. This one was way, way deadlier than the Titanic, but somehow it's been almost completely forgotten. It's a really chilling story about greed, about rules that were just ignored, and how a whole system basically set thousands of people up for a collision with absolute tragedy.
Let's just start with one number, a really big one, 4,386. That's how many people are thought to have died in the MV Doña Paz disaster. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. It's a number so big, it's almost impossible to picture, and every single one of those was a person, a life, just gone, in one night.
You know, we've all seen the movie, we all know the story of the Titanic, right? About 1,500 people lost their lives. Well, the Doña Paz, it claimed nearly 3 times that number. That's what makes this the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in recorded history. It's not even close.
So you gotta ask, right? How on earth does a disaster that huge, one that makes one of the most famous shipwrecks in the world look small by comparison, just vanish from the headlines? How does so few of us even know its name? Well, the answer to that is, honestly, just as tragic as the event itself.
Okay, so to really get how this happened, we have to look at the 2 ships at the heart of this. And let's be clear, this was not some freak accident between 2 perfectly good vessels. Nope. This was more like a resurrected wreck meeting a floating hazard.
So, let's talk about the Doña Paz. This ship had a very sketchy past. It actually started its life in Japan, built to carry just over 600 people. Then it gets sold to a company in the Philippines. And in 1979, there's a huge fire, it's completely gutted. I mean, it was declared a total loss. Should have been scrap metal, right? But no. Instead, they patched it up, rebuilt it, and then got it recertified to officially carry more than 1,500 people. Already, that's more than double its original design.
But here's the crazy part. Even that massively inflated number, 1,500, was a joke. On the night of the disaster, the ship wasn't carrying 1,500 people. It was packed, dangerously packed, with over 4,000 souls. We're talking almost 3 times its already questionable legal limit. It was just a floating tinderbox waiting for a spark.
And then you have the other ship, the oil tanker MT Vector. This thing wasn't just a ship, it was basically a crime scene waiting to happen. I mean, get this, investigations later found it was sailing without a license. Its safety certificate expired, the rudder busted, the crew wasn't even properly qualified, and to top it all off, on the night it all went down, there was literally no one at the lookout post. Nobody was watching where they were going.
And what was this rogue ship carrying? Oh, just 8,800 barrels of gasoline and other super flammable stuff. So you don't just have a tanker, you have a massive floating bomb, sailing blind, in the dark, through a really busy sea lane. What could possibly go wrong?
So, okay, the ships were obviously a huge problem, but it goes deeper than that. The whole system they were a part of was completely broken. When you look at the bigger picture, you realize this collision wasn't just possible. It was practically guaranteed to happen sooner or later.
You see, this whole thing didn't just happen on any random night. It happened during what's known as the Christmas rush. It's this huge annual thing where tons of workers from the big city, Manila, are desperate to get back home to their families in the provinces for the holidays. And that desperation means they'll cram onto anything that floats, overwhelming a transport system that was already barely holding it together.
There's this quote from one of the survivors, Lydia Pascal, and it just hits you right in the gut. She said the passengers were crammed in like cockroaches or ants. Just imagine that. People were sleeping on mats in the hallways. Families were sharing tiny cots meant for one person. Literally every bit of space on that ship was filled with a human body.
And the official passenger list? It was pure fiction. The manifest said there were 1,493 passengers, but that didn't count the hundreds of kids whose parents snuck them on board to save a few bucks. It didn't count the 1,000 or so soldiers who just got on without a ticket. The real number was a mystery, but it was thousands more than what the paperwork said.
So, it all comes to a head. It's 10:30 at night, December 20th, 1987. You have these 2 ticking time bombs of ships. They're sailing in the dark. The radios aren't working. Their crews are either unqualified or not even paying attention. And then, in the middle of the Tabla Strait, they find each other.
The impact was just instantaneous and unbelievably violent. The Vector's front just plows right into the side of the Doña Paz. And all that gasoline,
all 8,800 barrels of it, basically vaporizes. It just explodes into this gigantic fireball that swallows both ships whole and spreads out across the water. Another survivor, Paquito Osanabel, said something so haunting. He said the sea was itself a fire. Think about that. The water, the one thing that should save you from a burning ship, was also on fire. The people on board had this just horrific choice: stay on the ship and burn, or jump into an ocean of flames.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, it does. In the middle of all this chaos and terror, people start desperately looking for life vests. And they find them. But the lockers, they're locked. Locked shut. Why? The story is they were locked to stop people from stealing them. Could you believe that? The one piece of equipment that could have saved them was locked away to prevent petty theft.
But the horror doesn't stop there. What happened after the collision is, in its own way, just as shocking. For the people who died and their families, the nightmare was really just getting started.
Okay, check out this timeline of failure. It took 8 hours before the authorities even knew a crash had happened. 8 hours! And then it took another 8 hours for them to actually get a search and rescue mission going. That's a 16-hour delay. 16 hours! Anybody who might have survived the fire and the explosion, who was still alive in the water, they were just left out there, injured, in shark-infested waters for 16 hours. It was a death sentence.
So then came the blame game, the legal fight, and you know who got off scot-free? The massive oil company Caltex, the one that hired the death trap tanker in the first place. The Philippine Supreme Court basically said, hey, according to this voyage charter contract, it wasn't their job to check if the ship was safe. So a legal loophole let them walk. It was a win for the lawyers, but a total loss for justice.
And what about Sulpicio Lines, the company that owned the Doña Paz? Well, they just kept right on going. And believe it or not, this wasn't their last disaster. Over the next 20 years, more of their ships sank, killing hundreds and hundreds of other people. It's just this staggering pattern of failure with zero consequences. For over 30 years, the final resting place of these thousands of people was a mystery. They had no grave, no memorial on the spot. But just a few years ago, a discovery finally brought some closure, creating a haunting, silent monument.
In 2019, a research ship called the Petrel finally found them. Down at the bottom of the ocean, 500 meters deep, they found both the Doña Paz and the Vector, and they were just sitting there, upright on the seabed, a couple of 1,000 meters apart. Just a silent, chilling reminder of what happened that night.
So when you look at all of this, you have to understand something really important. The loss of over 4,000 lives. That wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck or an act of God. No, it was an accounting. It was the grim, predictable math of a system that looked at the cost of safety versus the drive for profit and decided that human lives just weren't worth the investment.